Let's catch up with our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Hi, Kethevane. Trump has quite publicly pushed Machado, the opposition leader, aside and now says he's going to work with Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's ally, despite calling for regime change. Why?
Well, look, it would have been the logical choice for the United States to turn to Maria Corina Machado, the opposition leader, the one who was barred from running in 2024, and the Nobel Peace Prize winner. But despite Machado really over the past few months going out of her way to sort of court Donald Trump's favors, to praise him, to dedicate her Nobel Peace Prize to him, to avoid criticizing anything that Donald Trump did, Trump has decided to, in a way, dismiss her and use some pretty harsh words during his press conference yesterday, saying she lacked the respect and support of the people in Venezuela to be able to be in charge. And he didn't even mention Edmundo González Urrutia, who was the man who stood in place of Machado during those elections, and which Donald Trump's own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had called the rightful president of Venezuela. Instead of going with that opposition, whoever the figure was, he decided, Donald Trump, to go with Delcy Rodriguez, to say that Maduro's vice president had a good conversation with Marco Rubio. Why that choice then? Well, it seems that maybe there are two options that could potentially go together. One, she's been in charge in Venezuela of managing the crucial oil industry, and we've heard a lot about how important the oil industry is in the eyes of Donald Trump. So that could be one of the reasons. Another one is that unless Donald Trump is ready to send thousands of American troops in Venezuela for a long time, like in Iraq or in other countries around the world, then the U.S. needs to rely on the military and security apparatus that is currently in place in Venezuela. And who is currently in charge of that apparatus? It is Rodriguez, who is currently the interim president, as it seems. And Marco Rubio seemed to confirm this morning on shows in the United States that they're willing to work, at least to give it a try, with the current regime, to give them the possibility, saying that they would make an assessment not on the public remarks, but on what happens next, what they do, and that they're going to see the actions. Rodriguez herself doesn't seem to be, at least publicly, playing that game, saying that the legitimate president is still Nicolas Maduro, and that Venezuela will not be the colony of any empire, of course, referencing the United States.
Like you mentioned, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been doing the media rounds to give an update on the U.S. operation. Let's hear from him.
We didn't occupy a country. This was an arrest operation. This was a law enforcement operation. He was arrested on the ground in Venezuela by FBI agents, read his rights, and removed from the country. The Department of War went in. They hit anything that was a threat to the agents that were going in to arrest him, and they hit anything that was a threat on the way out, and they hit anything that was a threat to them while they were on the ground. And that was a very limited and targeted operation.
Now, Kethevane, we've heard quite a few various justifications for the U.S. operation, Rubio calling it law enforcement. What's the official line now?
Well, look, clearly the administration is trying to frame this as a law enforcement operation. Marco Rubio, a couple of days ago, insisting that Nicolas Maduro was a fugitive of the U.S. justice system, and that basically this was American law enforcement going into Venezuela to grab a criminal and bring him to justice in the United States. That's how they're framing it. They're presenting Nicolas Maduro, of course, as a a terrorist, as the leader of a cartel. And even in the narco trafficking part, there has been some changes. Early on in the summer, we were told about how Venezuela was involved in the trafficking of fentanyl, which is a huge problem in the United States. The problem is Venezuela doesn't really make any fentanyl. They produce a lot of cocaine, but even then, the cocaine usually goes to Europe rather than to the United States. But when you look at the official indictment of Maduro, it is clearly cocaine that is the focus of that indictment. That is for the sort of law enforcement justification and the drugs aspect of this problem. Then there is the sort of political democratic sort of justification for the Americans, especially for people like Marco Rubio, who have long called for regime change in Venezuela. This is a leftist dictator that is not respecting the rights of its people, who stole an election in 2024, according to the Americans. But at the same time, they are now saying that this is not really about regime change because they are focusing on the vice president. But really, what we're seeing now is that the real focus, and we saw it in Donald Trump's presser, given how many times he used the word oil, that this is all about getting their hands on the oil industry in Venezuela.
Kethevane Gorjestani, thank you so much for your analysis, as always.